Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome everybody to Nightlight. Thank you for sharing your time with us. We so appreciate that. I want to first thank Ken Quiet Hawk for his amazing intro. He and his wife are native storytellers, and they have preserved their history, their cosmology, their traditions, and their magic in stories that they have shared through generations. It's an amazing way of providing historical information to the next generation, and it's certainly a mode that would probably benefit us even better than the written word in some of our textbooks, which kind of go out of style real fast as soon as they're published, for sure. Do check them out. It's Ken Quiet Hawk, and you just have to look up Native Storytellers on Google and you will find him. He's an amazing man. Tonight's show is a very special one. It's one that I'm very excited about because I have had Rebecca on the show, 3 years ago, and I have been fascinated by her work. Let me give you a little backup here. If you could see into the future and saw imminent danger to all humans, what would you do? Futurist Rebecca Hardcastle Wright is one of those rare individuals who has the capacity to look into the crystal ball of hard empirical data and recognize the dangers looming in our collective future. Her startling recommendation is that we reject the coming singularity of transhumanism, which feeds upon the theft of our consciousness and independence. She proposes we adopt a radical new concept of what it means to be truly human, or exoconsciousness, before it's too late. Her book is an important and serious roadmap for the future conservation of our species. Her book, Exoconscious Humans, Will Free Will Survive in an Increasingly Non-Human World, pushes beyond the limits of the known into an extraordinary life birthed through psychic intelligence. Exoconsciousness is a natural state seated in our ancient and innate cosmic consciousness. She emphasizes the significant role of exoconscious humans in our personal and planetary future. She offers nothing less than a solution for stepping outside our limited view of humans and into an expansive and available intelligence and creativity. Throughout the book, she shares her background in psychic experiences and her voyage into the curious artificial world of transhumanism. It is such a pleasure to have her on the show again. She is a constant source of amazing information, insight, and I think that you're going to thoroughly enjoy it. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Thank you, Barb. What a wonderful introduction, and I so look forward to our conversation tonight. I think it's becoming more and more important every day.
Well, it really is.
Time.
And I think that, before we even dive headfirst into this, which if we were just sitting and talking, we'd be deep in it already. But for those who don't understand the two terms, exoconsciousness and transhumanism, let's define those so people understand what we're talking about.
Okay. So exoconsciousness is a term that it was given to me actually through an event, a personal event, and we can talk about that also if you want to. But it's changed definitions over the years. At one time it was more academic. Today it's more practical, and we're defining exoconscious as the innate. So all humans have this innate human ability to connect, communicate, and co-create with ETs and multidimensionals. And by multidimensionals, I mean that would be an energy, an orb, an angel. So it would be a being that it just holds an energetic space, could be multidimensionally holding that energetic space. And extraterrestrial for me means a being that comes from another planet that has a timeline, has a history, has a planetary geography, very much like humans in that respect. Maybe has different capacities, different tendencies, brings different energetics, but has the same timeline and time-space type of consciousness that we have in some respect.
Okay.
And transhumans would be the scientific belief that by using science and engineering, we will be able to enhance and advance humans. So it would be any kind of genetic engineering tied to geoengineering, tied to nanomedicine, for example, is a new field within transhumanism. So it would be the cyborgian type of pathway where a cyborg is a combination of a human and a robot. So it's a roboticized human. Humans working side by side with robots. The distinction, one of the biggest distinctions between exoconscious humans and transhumans are that exoconscious humans believe that our consciousness is in our DNA, our body, our neural system, our brain, and very importantly, it's a field in which we participate outside of our body. So we go into this field where we receive information and energetics, and that's one of the key ways that we live our life. Transhumans, on the other hand, are creating an artificial field of consciousness that's more of a cybernetics, so a steered field. It'll be a field that will be engineered and steered. It's a closed loop, and humans will be part of the machine at that point, part of the machine, the field. So the field would be a field of shared human and machine.
Okay. When I was reading through the book and everything, I kept getting the feeling that for me, and I guess everybody's definition is going to be a little bit different, but for me, the exoconsciousness had more to do with the spiritual essence of linking to cosmic consciousness, to other consciousnesses out there, and the transhumanism took away from, for a great deal, it took away from the creative, the spiritual essence that we have available to us. I mean, obviously there is going to be obviously a blending of the two. It can't be one without the. They're going to coexist. It's a matter of how do they coexist.
Absolutely. Probably another name for exoconsciousness is cosmic consciousness. I think that's a more ancient name for it. I was given this word exoconsciousness, and it's interesting that the way it came to me was the same way about 10 years later that it came to a man in Brazil. He had the identical experience that I did. But yes, that's absolutely true. I would say not only is exoconsciousness spiritual, but it's also multidimensional. So we're talking about multidimensional mind, the ability to live in, many different dimensions, and we can get into that later, how we can begin to look at that. But yes, I would say multidimensional, where transhumanism is more capturing everything. So our biology, our belief system, our emotions, through memes, our spiritual side, through immortality, you can live forever, all of that captured in actually a rather flat kind of closed loop.
The transhumanism almost seemed to me like it was one-dimensional. I mean,
yes.
The essence of creativity in a transhuman state would only have the material to draw on it, whatever was inputted. And in exoconsciousness, you have the ability to reach outside of yourself and be multidimensional and get creativity from other sources. So that it to me, it was the transhumanism. While I understand, computers and science and all of that are necessary, obviously, but it's if you try to go, it's sort of like a teeter-totter. If you can stay right as the fulcrum in the middle and get the best of both worlds, you're fine. But if you tend to go one direction or the other, you're out of balance, and that tends to send you in a loop that can be never-ending.
Well, that's what Steiner refers to as Armon. I'm sure you've probably done shows on Rudolf Steiner, but the transhuman would push back at you with that definition and say that we don't really know what AI and deep learning and artificial intuition is going to be creating. So they would argue back that there's facets of reality that a computer can create through this artificial intelligence that a human can't create. And that may or may not be true. I don't know at this point. But what I do know is true is that if you, as an exoconscious human, that my ability to use my psychic intelligence and go out into this open, free will field of consciousness will never be replicated completely by a computer program or by deep learning or in any of those. If you look at every society, China is a phenomenal example of it. When you look at the history of what China brought to the world prior to being kind of locked into this social control system that they're locked in, where they're just building little toys or whatever, or doodahs to sell to the West. The invention of paper, the invention of currency. I mean, China was incredibly creative, and then it all fell away. And that's exactly, and I think that the transhumanists are aware of this, and that's why they use so much propaganda. They have to use propaganda to spin these almost gamer-like realities in order to get people to buy into it and assent to it and say that, oh yeah, this is cool. This is so much cooler than being a natural human. Whether via TikTok or in your news feed or certainly Netflix movies. They're the prime example of it. That this is going to be the coolest thing that we could ever imagine, and what they don't show you is the reality behind that. So let's just imagine that we see one of these shows on Netflix where we have these big, a room filled with a room-sized computer screen, and they're poking and punching and moving things all around, and they're going all over the globe, and it looks absolutely exciting, and all these algorithms are churning away, and the good guys are fighting the bad guys. When the reality of artificial intelligence is that there's a lot of slave labor to it. And those people are actually called ghost workers. And those ghost workers are the humans that get paid maybe $15, maybe $20 an hour tops, and they do all of the backroom work to make sure that AI can function properly.
Well, I think
and you
the
never
thing
hear
that,
about them.
No. I think the thing that bothers me about AI is that in many ways, I see kids who are so attached to their cell phones they can't look up when they're walking and they walk into walls. It feels to me as though it takes away aspects of what makes us human that are important. Learning how to research, learning how to communicate, getting together with other people, and we'll forget there's a pandemic. But the element of being able to be creative, the creative stuff is what gets to me, because it used to be you would go to the library if you wanted to research something. Now you just talk into your phone, and there's an essence that has been taken away from the generation that is now growing up, that they will never understand what it is to research, what it is to dig for information, what it is to, have to look for answers to problems. It bothers me greatly. I was a school teacher for 25 years. I'm seeing this generation being dulled down in many places where it should be, perked up, so to speak.
Well, part of transhumanism is it's really what's called technocracy, which I'm sure that you read about in the book, and we can talk about what technocracy means. But one of the reasons why young people, their heads are in the phone, is because in order to function in the way life has been constructed now, especially since COVID, is you don't need to go to the library. You don't need to engage with other humans. That everything that you need to function successfully in life is on that phone and in that computer and in that game. And that was a program that was designed, my research in the book had it going back to World War I, post-World War I, to get humans attracted to this loop of information and data, to make it very sexy and cool and very appealing in all ways.
Well, I have to admit,
they succeeded.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm as big a user as everybody else is, but it's sort of like there is something in transhumanism. I mean, the nanotechnology, the ability to replicate parts of the human body, to be able to, I mean, I definitely see the benefit to it, but at the same time, it's taking away from our natural abilities. It's taking us away from nature. So again, there needs to be a balance, and I don't know if there is a balance in the world at this point in time as far as the two go. It's a very the technology that is out there is just phenomenal, and yet in one way it depends. I think what really it depends upon is how is this technology, as it's used, is it used for the benefit of mankind, or is it used for other kinds of technology that are possibly not to the benefit of humankind?
Well, directly, that question goes into the type of ethics that are used. And, they use a different type of ethics. But I think the root of your question is really the root of my question. And it's one of the reasons I get up every morning is why does natural human consciousness need this this AI, this artificial intelligence, this transhumanism, in order to advance. Once again, Steiner and many, mystery schools, the theosophy, talked about how we were going to move through this age of transhumanism and this artificial field that would they, as they describe it, trap human souls and divert us from becoming a higher species. That this trap that was laid, I don't know why it's there. I'm trying to understand the purposes of it, and I'm trying to understand what it is in the composition that makes us human that we need for this to happen in order to break into this new world. I mean, some in the mystery schools claim that as we come through this time and navigate it successfully, that humans will be like unto archangels. I can totally see that. I can see humans who navigate this successfully being that and having that kind of confidence in their soul and their spirit in their physical body, in the capabilities of their natural biology. And yet transhumanism is here. So I don't know all of the layers that are connecting the two. I think we all have to live into it and experience it, because that's spirituality. It's always a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey of, much as we'd like to have it be this, Pollyanna, pink-filled balloon journey, it's not. It's hard. And this will probably be, in modern history, one of the most challenging times that humans have ever lived through spiritually. Because if you look at, I come from a religious background, so I went to seminary and I'm ordained in the United Methodist Church, and I worked as an interfaith campus chaplain for many years at a campus in Ohio at Wright State University, and I have a lot of friends in the Catholic Church and in the hierarchy of the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church and the Jewish religion and actually in Islam, and every one of them has capitulated to transhumanism. And there's little splinter groups that haven't, but if you look at it through the lens of the COVID vaccine and the nanotechnology in the COVID vaccine, they've all capitulated, including the Dalai Lama.
Wow.
Including the Dalai Lama, you don't go to the Vatican unless you're double vaxxed.
Wow. Now, I have the same kind of background. I'm ordained and I've served in the pulpit too, and it's kind of like I look at the potential for humanity and human consciousness, and you can develop the ability to reach outside of not only yourself, but this reality and into other dimensions. There is, we have the capacity to do that as humans, natural humans with no technology. There have been those that have been able to translocate. There have been those that have been able to levitate. There are those that have developed the skills to be able to do all sorts of phenomenally wonderful things. And it's a matter of practice and work and development and all of that stuff. But without the aid of technology, they've been able to do this. The Buddha was able to translocate himself from one side of the river to the other side of the river in the blink of an eye. So Jesus walked on water. Now, I can do that, but it has to be frozen.
Right.
So it's stuff that we can do, that the potential is there. Now, will transhumanism avail us of that benefit? Instead of just translocating, you have to say, beam me up. is that a good thing? I don't know. I look at communication with other realms.
Are you asking if transhumanism will allow us to do these spiritually advanced actions? I would say no.
Well, yeah, that's where I am. And
Right.
It's sort of like, transhumanism, I mean, the science is trying to connect to other species, realms, worlds, dimensions, but exoconsciousness people can already do that.
Yes.
Now I can't grow a hand if I lose my hand at this moment in time, but I would imagine that the capacity is there in my DNA. Mm-hmm. If you take a look at the aura, even if you cut my hand off, my hand is still there energetically, so that I don't understand why people aren't investigating into us doing it for ourselves instead of looking for science to do it for us. But you know which side of the court I'm on with all of this. I mean, it's obvious that transhumanism scares me. So, I am hopeful that. Go ahead.
Maybe what we're looking at in terms of this navigation of transhumanism, maybe spiritually what we're looking at, and this is just a guess, that traditionally in most of human history that we know of, it's certainly not, I'm not necessarily talking about Atlantis or Lemuria or Mu or whatever, but certainly in our recent human history, there have only been spiritual adepts, saints, spiritual adepts, archangels, whatever, that have been able, bodhisattvas, that have been able to have these higher spiritual powers. Now, maybe what we're looking at with having to navigate transhumanism, that which doesn't kill you, saves you. So maybe what we're looking at in this process is more of a mass consciousness, a mass identification of these spiritual abilities that were at one time only eligible. The only eligible people, the belief system was the only eligible people were the adepts of whatever religion, and maybe that's what we're going to end up with. That's where I'm aiming in my work. So what I'm trying to do, Barbara, at this point, it's the only thing that makes sense to me is, so I like to study science. I like to investigate. So every time I investigate something, like say the brain, so I've looked into brain science for years, or DNA. Every time I study those, I take those kernels of knowledge that science and engineering and mathematics has brought to me, and I take that and I use that to say, okay, if this is true about us biologically, for example, with DNA, I just doing a talk on this in Brazil next month. If this is true about our human DNA, and it's been proved by scientists today, then why can't we, I call it transmute, why can't we transmute that knowledge into exoconscious humans and begin to apply it? So instead of applying it, so it kind of goes back to your comment, why not apply it for the benefit and advancement of natural human consciousness and biology? Why not apply it to that? And that's what I'm doing. And more comes to the fore as I do it. And I'm not the only one doing it. I think there are many of us out there that are beginning to see that, some interesting information is coming our way, and we can use this for all humankind to benefit from. And then whatever transhumanism is doing with it, that kind of becomes insignificant in a sense, I think. When humans are given the option. It's just that they're not given the option.
Well, with transhumanism, it feels to me as though it puts you in a bubble. It feels as though there's an essence of mind control. There's an essence of being controlled by others, and you know that it kind of reminds me of the Borg, so, you know, in Star Trek. You know, it's like, okay, so we all have this part of us that is connected to a major computer someplace. And does that mean, you know, just because we can draw information from it, it also means that it can put information into our venues that we didn't ask for, and yet it's there. I mean, even as, you know, your favorite ice cream is now chocolate, so that you go out and buy chocolate ice cream all the time. But it comes down to the fact that, you know, above and beyond that, it can go into even deeper essences of how you live your life and how you survive, and you become a slave to it, and that bothers me. Where's my free will?
That's exactly what they're doing. That's what you've just laid out is exactly what they're doing. And they already, I mean, Charles Lieber, I'm sure your listeners know about him, the Harvard chemist that was arrested right after COVID was declared in January 2020. He was arrested at Harvard for his work with the Wuhan lab, and he wasn't a biologist or a virologist. He was a chemist, and what he was really working on was human brain to computers, connecting human brains to computers, so that we will participate in an internet mind, and that and he's got patents for the ability to actually insert an operating platform in the human body through his nanowires and his nanotransistors. That's kind of like a plug-and-play application like you have on your computer. Like a plug-and-play would be you could hook up a computer monitor, you can hook up a keyboard, a gamepad, a joystick, and those can all be inserted into as an operating platform in the human body, as you said, to transform us humans into cyborgs, a hybrid human with machine integrations, and then remote control us. Once the nanotechnology is in us through nanotransistors, through nanowires, through graphene oxide, I'm sure your people have read a lot about that. You know, once that's in our body, the connection begins. The connection is well on the way. It goes past the blood-brain barrier, and it moves through your entire vascular system. And that's the purpose of it. And the purpose is not to have free will. The purpose is not to think. The purpose is to be a resource, to have as I write about in the book, to have a barcode. You will have a barcode. And so I took the barcode thing, I looked at the barcode, and I'm like, well, they're barcoding our DNA. And I'm looking at, why is DNA barcodable? Well, DNA is barcodable because every person's DNA is unique. So not one person on Earth has the same DNA. So every person alive today has a barcodable, unique DNA. Now you take that information, for example, and you say, oh, my DNA is unique. But beyond the fact that my DNA is unique, my DNA can actually fold like the origami paper folds that kids make when they make the dogs and the flowers out of paper. Our DNA does that. And our DNA self-assembles, so it reorders itself. It goes into different functions and patterns. This is one of the most important properties of our DNA. And it can become stable, so they put this silica, they coat our DNA with silica, and that makes it more stable in order to deposit the nanowires and the nanotechnology so that our DNA then becomes programmable and conductive. So it conducts electricity. It sends and receives signals via computer.
Well, we are electromagnetic. We're electromagnetic.
We are electromagnetic.
Anyhow.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a done deal. I mean, this isn't new. this isn't new technology. I mean, a lot of this is 10, 15 years old. It's probably older than that because that's how old the patents are.
God. So, I mean, you talked about them creating avatars for us. In other words, replicating our bodies. And so then it's a matter of who is the real us, whether it's the avatar that's been created for us or is it the physical body that was the original pattern. And does the avatar have the same abilities that, I believe there's something special about each individual. And I don't think it's transferable to an avatar. I really don't. So, these
Well.
Okay.
I would say a transhuman would disagree with you, but I'm going to back up for a minute just for your listeners. So, we were talking about avatars. So the basis of avatars, or one of the bases of avatars, is that in this artificial field of consciousness that's being created, that we will each have a twin. So this was really begun at Purdue University called the Sentient World Simulation System. And they began to create a data bank of every individual on the earth. So I would think by now, I don't know, it's probably 15, 20 years old. I think by now I'm sure they have an avatar or a data bank of every human on the earth. Now, in terms of the uniqueness, this is where it gets dicey, in my opinion. So we learn a lot about stem cells, and we've learned a lot about like the fake meat that they're selling us. So a lot of that's done with stem cell and engineering. So if you can successfully blockchain and identify give a barcode to a DNA. So the DNA is already on the barcode, okay? The DNA barcode is then put on a blockchain because there's no one computer system that can hold it all. So every different DNA is put on a different blockchain, and then that's connected there then on through the cloud. But that artificial DNA that has been barcoded is able to track all of you, all of your behaviors, all of your emotions, all of your feelings, all of your actions, your behaviors, your psychology. Maybe not perfectly, but it's tracking how you, once again, function, like we were talking about what you need to function in the world. It's tracking how you function in the world, which is part of your essence.
Yeah,
maybe
it
not
is
your
part
spiritual essence, but
yeah, that's where I was going. I mean, it's my patterns that I've had through life that I have exhibited certain, an if-then type thing or a reaction to certain situations. That's all patternable. However,
yes.
My spirit has free will and can shift and change and alter my perspective in a nanosecond. And that kind of pattern can't anticipate where that would go. It can, as with any computer, it can look at the past experiences and it can say, this is most probably how she's going to go. But what if I would diverge from that? So I still think there is an independence here that is not computerized, that cannot be computerized.
Well, once again, to argue the other side, we can, a transhuman would say, we have the God code. We have the God gene. We've already, MIT and different DARPA and different groups have worked with, quote, religious extremists in the Middle East wars, and we've developed this ability to switch on and off the God code. That part of our brain that connects us to God. It could be to the point that future generations that it's no longer switched on.
Well, see, that's
it's very dark and nefarious.
That's where I'm. That's the one place where in my philosophy, and it's nobody else's, it's mine. Our brain is merely the computer that the spirit is using to manifest within reality.
Yeah.
So if you want to turn my brain off, go ahead. My spirit still is out there working just as hard. So if you turn my God code off, it doesn't mean that I'm disconnected. It means that my body is no longer connected. It does not mean that my spirit is not. Yeah.
But what I think this brings us around to that, that quandary I have. Why do we need transhumanism to advance public or mass consciousness, advancement of mass consciousness? And it may be just that. It may be that humans find that, I would say, our brain and our entire biology is our God code. It's our spiritual connection. So and that our spirit can exist separate from that.
Yeah.
But it has a different function on a 3D and in the human body at that point.
Oh, yeah. I would say that everything we are is one of the spirit that's working through.
Yeah. Yes. And so one of the reasons I use the word exoconscious human instead of exoconscious alien or exoconscious ET is because of the human part. To me, I think that what we're going through is helping us see is the importance of the biology that, as you say, we already possess. It's perfect. What we possess is already. We just need to function with it better. We need to use it more effectively. We need to believe that we can use it more effectively. And as long as 3D Earth is here, so the third dimension, in relationship to the first dimension of the core of the Earth, the second dimension of the elementals, so we are 3D. So the plan for transhumanism is that they take over 3D. They take over all body. So those theological arguments of Gnosticism, or the body's tainted and the spirit is pure, we're going to live through a reckoning of all of those arguments with our physical body.
See, I think, and again, it's just my philosophy that our body, the human body, is already an avatar wherein the spirit dwells.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that creating another one is pointless. But science, there are so many things that science can do, has done, that can make life better for all of us. In my simple opinion, though, that when there is an invention of some sort that is phenomenal, the powers that be, whomever they are, tend to try to weaponize whatever the invention is, or hide whatever the invention is, because there are other sources controlling just what it is we can develop and manifest. And I think that's happening a lot these days because of big pharma and because of the corporations and all of that. I truly believe there's a cure for cancer out there, but they're holding it back because,
Yeah. I actually work for a doctor as a therapist, and he cures cancer. He's cured cancer in many people. Cancer is very, very curable. It always has been. It's just the belief system that it's not, and the refusal to want to, do what it takes in terms of changing your life and purifying your body. But that's this issue that you bring up of the weaponizing and and I would say monetizing so inventions are monetized and weaponized both, manipulated. That was one of the primary things that we've been working on with the Institute for Exoconsciousness, because the Institute sees that if you're a brilliant physicist or a brilliant engineer, it's really the only place you have to go is government, and by that I mean military, intel, university, or corporation. I mean, that's where you can go. It's almost like that's the artificial transhumanism, closed loop. That's the only place that you can go. And what we've been trying to do is to just segment out a small group of those people and say, are you using your psychic abilities, your natural human psychic abilities, creative, like you've been talking about? Are you using that to bring forth inventions and innovations that can benefit society? And if so, would you be willing to work with a group like us and work outside that confine of, university, corporations, government, military, DARPA, or whatever? But it's very slow going, because not only do they have, the lion's share of the money, but we're to the point now that communication is becoming so difficult, as in terms of censorship, that the internet is not ours. We just have that on loan, and we can be taken off at any time. So for me, one of the biggest issues is, how do we as an exoconscious community create an alternative internet, or something similar to an alternative internet?
Transhumanism.
Pardon?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, until we have that alternative internet that can't be hacked by the government or the military or the tech boys, it's going to be very, very difficult, because they control the planet. They control the internet planet. The satellite rings, that's why it's so important for people to know about geoengineering, to know about satellites, to know about the Earth to space infrastructure that I write about in my book. If you don't understand that, then you don't really understand the reality that you're working in. And if you can't freely communicate, that's a huge problem.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, you talked about, is the Earth wall? There's a shield, a wall, a satellite?
Space fence. Yeah, space fence.
A space fence. Yeah. You want to go into that a little bit? I know a lot of people haven't heard of that.
Okay. Well, that's actually the work of Ilana Freeland. The book that I quote from most predominantly and try to explain is called Under an Ionized Sky. And she has long subtitles under that. But the whole premise of the book is looking at the different layers of engineering that have gone on throughout these decades of, from satellite engineering to on down to HARP, the high auroral frequency out of Alaska. And I think there's like 30-some HARPs around the country right now. That those all operate electrically, and that's up in the ionosphere, ionizing the ionosphere, and then down through what we see every day, especially here in Arizona, the chemtrails. So the chemtrails that are laid down, the aluminums that are laid down, the barium, the salts, the aluminums that are laid down. Once again, salt, silicon, to sort of stabilize everything. Down to on the Earth grids, the Gwyn towers that move the weather that the chemtrails create, and then the massive underground installation. So once you understand, that's sort of it's Cliff Notes version of it, but once you understand how that, and then of course that the 5G, 6G comes into this. So once you understand that infrastructure and how it's all encompassing, And the military calls it full spectrum dominance. That's in operation across our globe, across our planet. Then you understand how transhumanism works, that we will be an item in that full spectrum dominance as a transhuman. We will be an item. We will be a barcoded item on that system. And we will be, as you say, mind controlled. We will be told what to buy, and it links back into the central bank digital currency system, where humans are enslaved by their biology through this synthetic biology, through this nanotechnology. And that's how it will work. And so they call it the Internet of Biology, the Internet of Behavior. Goes by a lot of different names.
Well,
and
I mean,
we're so far down the field.
Yeah, I was going to say we're already slaves to our credit cards and our we're already a society that is controlled by monetary needs and whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think what really, sometimes it feels hopeless, but the reality is we still have, we are in a transhumanism culture.
Yes.
But we still have the potential to expand into an exoconsciousness individuality, mm-hmm. so that and if enough people do that transition into exoconsciousness, then the pendulum swings in the other direction.
The pendulum also swings into cosmic consciousness. So that's what's so important, I think, about the whole idea of exoconsciousness, is that you're not only then operating with other humans, but you're also operating them, we say co-creatively, with other extraterrestrials and multidimensionals. So your whole field of function is just exponentially greater than anything you could ever do with transhumans.
Oh, absolutely. And, when you reach outside of your dimension, when you reach outside of your physical reality, there is so much information there. There is so much creative inspiration there that you can bring back and incorporate into your life to make the changes in your life to affect other people as well. So it's not hopeless. It's something that everyone is capable of, and
mm-hmm.
So how does someone start? Once one recognizes that holy cow, I am so controlled by everything that's going on, I have lost my freedom to be me. How does somebody turn around and start to move in the other direction?
I think that the important word that you said just now was individual. As much as transhumanism is mass consciousness, mass hive mind, they call it hive mind, the exoconscious will become individual. So these will be individuals who gather in different configurations, but each individual has to do their work. And they have to figure it out on their own. And, one of the ways, people are very interested in is how do I even make contact? How do I even relate to this field of exoconsciousness? And, then you can go into have a person understand the different modalities of making contact. For one of the great ways to make contact is through prayer or meditation. I mean, there's a whole mystical, in terms of Western Christianity, there's a whole mystical tradition of what they refer to as saints that basically prayed themselves into altered states of consciousness, into multidimensional minds. They prayed themselves there. They used a protocol of prayer. There's certainly, the Buddhist tradition There's of meditation. That's another way. I mean, one of my good friends who just written many, many books, he wrote about 4 books on being with the beings and We Are Disclosure and all these UFO, ET books, but he never had a conscious extraterrestrial experience, which was interesting. So what he did was he just decided on his own. He just said, I just found somebody on the internet that was doing meditation, and it resonated with me. It seemed real to me, and he began to do that meditation, began to familiarize himself and gain a comfort level, and lo and behold, he had this vivid ongoing contact now. So I think people also begin in this field. A lot of people have near-death experiences. That's not uncommon now to have a near-death experience. And when I think that happens, then you take that and you build on it and you do something with it. Some people practice lucid dreaming. Some people practice out-of-body experiences. There's just there's probably 8 or 10 major contact modalities that humans can have. And it doesn't all have to be, the ETs came to me. It could be other ways that we do this.
I think, you went into, most people are familiar with close encounters of the first kind, second kind, third kind.
Right.
But you took it to 6, which I thought was really rather fascinating, so that people get an idea as to, I think I believe almost every person on the planet has had a close encounter of one kind or another, and just not recognized it. So, let's briefly, real fast, go through the different kinds so that people can understand what you were talking about.
Okay, so the close encounter categories really came from the work of Alan Hynek, and he was, the first 3 are more about sightings of a UFO. Did you see it at night? Did you see it during the daytime? Did you have a more individual encounter with it? And then CE4 was Jacques Vallée's CE4. And what Jacques Vallée was doing was he was saying, kind of like what you're saying, Barbara, Jacques was saying that we're looking at a whole human history of contact, and it's made in the whole myths that, especially in the British Isles, of the mystical people and the elves and the underworld and the visitors and the Tuatha Dé that came to the British Isles, and in every the Indians and the crafts that visited, that all of these myths really hold a reality to them, and individuals have ongoing contact via these mythologies, and they share them with each other. As a matter of fact, I was recently doing a panel with a woman, and she was the vice chancellor of University of Guyana there in South America, considered a Caribbean nation. And she was saying that in her country, which was French Guyana at one point, that everyone who wakes up in the morning, they go out to the market or they go out to do their work. They're very, person-to-person kind of culture. Everyone gets together in the morning, and the first thing they do is share their lucid dreaming and interpret it to each other.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that just beautiful?
Yes.
So that's CE4. That's a CE4. That's actually that's a CE6 actually, but it's also CE4. So it's taking this myth that we have. Passport to Manjonia was the book that he wrote about, and about this concept. So CE5 would be Stephen Greer and going out and having the CE5 gatherings where you gather and you call in the craft, and it's about having a mutually agreeable exchange between you and the lights in the sky. but it's more focused outwardly into the lights. So Jacques Vallée is focused more on the folklore. Greer was focused more on the lights, kind of outside of ourselves. So what exoconsciousness as a CE6 would be is focusing inwardly to the individual and what their actual current time experience is, and how they have integrated that experience into their life and the meaning of their life and the function of their life.
Well, it's I know there are whole bunches of people out there sitting and thinking, am I an exoconsciousness person or am I a transhumanism person? Where is my consciousness at this point in time? And certainly if there's a question, you're probably exoconsciousness looking for a way to put a hook into it so that you can, further develop it, probably. If you're a transhumanist person, you probably try to show off.
Right, yeah. And I think also, if you're a CE5 person, CE5 people aren't necessarily exoconscious. A lot of CE5 people get very, very wrapped up in the kind of the nuts and bolts of craft identification and craft physics. So I think that's that's more scientific, that's more, mathematical, and, the engineering of the craft. I would say that's another kind of niche that someone could go into. If your focus is turned inward to you as an individual and how this contact experience is influencing you and how it is working in your life and how you're integrating it into your everyday life, then that is more exoconscious. So it's the whole mind, body, spirit. Like, how does this, maybe this is a good time to also refer to the Free Foundation, Ray Hernandez's Free Foundation, that did the survey of 5,000 contactees. And one of the things that his scientific survey did was it pointed out the fact that these people who had non-human contact were affected physically, that in many ways they became healers, they healed themselves, they felt the presence of their DNA and the power of their DNA. They found that their mind changed. A lot of them, quite frankly, prior to contact, they didn't even consider themselves psychic. They just thought they were just kind of normal. And they have contact and they become hypersensitive and psychic. So just emotionally they change. Emotionally they change, and spiritually there's a huge leap that happens spiritually. But then again, in the survey, it's always individual. It's what I care about the planet, what I care about my relationship to God, what I care about in terms of having a peaceful world of cohabitation. But the most startling thing of all is that out of the survey, almost 80% said that if they had the chance, they'd do it again. That they felt like it was a very beneficial experience for them, and they would definitely repeat it, and they wanted to repeat it.
I think what a lot of people have to understand is when we're talking about contact and communication, we aren't necessarily saying that little green men are going to sit down and have dinner with you and talk to you about their planet, although they could, but basically it's inspiration. It's getting insight from other realms. I think Thomas Edison used to, when he had a problem, he used to take a nap, and when he woke up, he had the answer to the problem that he was working on. He was reaching outside of his own consciousness and allowing something to flow to him from another realm. Nikola Tesla, the same way. He drew information from cosmic consciousness for sure. So that just because you haven't, seen a UFO or been abducted doesn't mean you can't have had contact. It just means that the way in which you open yourself up to communication with other dimensions and other realms is going to be different from other people's. That's all. And
it's very subtle. Yeah.
It really is. I know that. I mean, I've seen a UFO, and when I saw it, the first thing that occurred to me was, there's more out there. I have to find what it is. I mean, and I was in a group of people. This thing landed on my campus and then took off and swooped over the dorm. There were people that were screaming. There were people that were afraid. There were people that did not see it. And so it's a matter of where were you when you had that experience? Did you acknowledge it? Did you recognize it? Or did you close it out because it wasn't time for you to recognize it? So that I have to admit I don't have a direct line. However, I know that I can get in the zone and open that portal and bring information through in a heartbeat if I want to. So it's something that you work at, and then the more you trust it, the more intensely the information that you get, or inspiration that you get, or suggestions. In my experience, they don't tell you what to do or how to do it. They tell you the philosophy that you can use to develop it to your own benefit if it's appropriate for you. Mm-hmm. I find them not interfering in your own development, but giving you a philosophy that you can apply to a situation to make it better for yourself. That's just my experience. There may be people that get, a book of instructions. I've never had that. That would be cool. But it feels to me as though the consciousnesses that are out there that are available to us are a very gentle consciousness, and we have to develop on our own. We have to find our own way, but they'll give us a philosophy to do it. Do you get something like that, or similar, or different?
Oh no, I totally agree with what you're saying. And it's funny when you were talking about. Just want to plug in a little thing that I learned from science when you were talking about the UFO came and some people didn't see it when you were in college. It flew over your dorm and some people didn't see it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a lot of contactees. We hear the stories of, I say, I'm the contactee, but nobody else in my family has a memory or saw it. So how does this happen? The way it happens is, once again, the uniqueness of our DNA, that our DNA has a bioresonance. So Barbara's bioresonance is different than Rebecca's bioresonance. So this electromagnetic frequency that is unique to us is that our DNA is involved in, is how we connect to other beings. So what transhumans have found, that once they bark, this is way out there, but this is what they're doing, so we might as well talk about it. That so your DNA has a bioresonance, and that when your DNA is barcoded, that bioresonance is part of your algorithm used to create your avatar, and that then an electromagnetic signal can be sent to your DNA, and only you will be affected, not those around you. So it's basically, if you're at a football stadium with 60,000 people, they can broadcast only to you. But
now,
just the same way, go ahead.
No, finish your thought.
So it's just the same way that as humans, say, become more archangel, advanced consciousness, more of this evolved spirits, we're going to do it through our bioresonance. That's why we need our bodies. That's why we have to preserve our bodies. When we lose that DNA bioresonance, we use one of the gateways that we have to connect to these other dimensions and to these other beings.
Okay, so something that I have wondered about for a very long time. You know, the 23andMe and Ancestry.com have taken DNA samples from all of us to provide us with the information so we can do our whatever. I firmly believe that volunteering of our DNA was used to map out the population to a greater degree. And when the testing for COVID started out, they were taking swabs from inside and they were collecting DNA samples. I think they're looking for certain DNAs, but I don't know what kind.
Well, yeah, I think that they're absolutely categorizing DNAs. Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, probably for a lot of different reasons.
Oh,
and mind control is going to be one of them. So
are there
customized mind control is one of the others.
Okay. Because to me it was supplying DNA samples, by the millions, possibly more, to be categorized in some form or another, looking for, in some ways they talk about the Rh negative factor being, survivors of Atlantis, and maybe looking for those people or are there certain DNAs that are more susceptible to mind control than others? I mean,
well, yeah, just like there's a segment of the population that's highly able to be hypnotized. I mean, that's a scientific fact. So yeah, I would say that's absolutely what's happening. But what we have to get our mind around that's so important, I feel, is the vastness of this project. The vastness is beyond belief. The financing and the vastness of it is just, I think it's very stealth. It's kind of like, did you ever go to the beach and you'd see the rip current, what a rip current looks like? So you'll be at the beach and there'll be all these waves. And then the rip current will be this really kind of peaceful part of the ocean. And so people walk right into the rip current because it looks so peaceful.
Yeah.
But underneath that is the rip current, and you could drown. And I oftentimes I think of transhumanism in this same way. It's a current within the ocean of consciousness, and it looks so fun and cool, and I'm going to do, I'll live in augmented reality, and I'm going to have all my metadata in one place, and I'm really going to be cool. When you could drown.
Well, yeah. So with that said, where do we go with this? I mean, we talk about they are compiling this. They are doing this. They are putting the satellites out there. Who are they?
Well, I don't know who controls the planet. I mean, I would just be like launching a huge guess at that point. I think that, you can identify major players, certainly, in this. A major player is the military, and they're super soldier. They use it for national defense. A major player is medicine and pharmaceuticals. Certainly have become, a premier player in all of this. And, of course, the central banks that rule the planet are a major player. One of the things that Catherine Austin Fitts, I don't know if you follow her work, but she talks a lot about transhumanism and in terms of the economy. And one of the things that she says is happening with transhumanism is that humans, when there was slavery, the slaves kept running away. So, you lost your collateral. Your collateral just ran away and got across the Ohio River, and they're gone. Your collateral's gone. And for the first time ever, the bankers and the financiers and the wealth aren't going to lose their collateral because they're going to have your DNA. They're going to have your bioresonance. They're going to be able to control you electromagnetically. And and I think the other thing to realize who they are is that they are planetary. They are, these big groups like, World Economic Forum or, conglomerations of pharmaceutical groups, and just like COVID has taught us. I mean, that was a global program. There were people from China and United States and Europe and UK, and so all of these are very, the computer's giving them ability to move all of this global, and what's happened is that we've kind of defaulted. We've defaulted to this takeover. And if we don't default, it's kind of like the pilots with the whole, the vaccination with the whole Southwest Airlines. I mean, who would have thought that the pilots were going to be the one to stand up? Yeah. Obviously, they're the only ones. No, nobody else is standing up very much. Some doctors are standing up.
Yeah.
But,
it's still yet to come.
It's still, and we're still in early years. So I think what you have to kind of swallow, and this is a big swallow, is the fact that once you get into this and once you decide that I want to, as we say in the Institute for Exoconsciousness, I want to preserve and advance my natural human consciousness, that when you say that you're going to begin making decisions that are big decisions, and that your life will never be the same. And that's probably going to be the springboard to moving great numbers of people into higher consciousness.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I don't know who I was talking to, but they said, well, it'll be nice to get back to normal. And I looked at them and I said, normal will never happen again. You're experiencing the new normal, and it's not going to be this way for much longer. So, it's a terrible thing to say, but it's exciting because now you can really talk about things like consciousness. And I mean, oh my goodness, when I got into this field, it was like, my heavens, it was 60 years ago, and I would have lost my job if they had known what I was interested in. They literally probably contractually could have fired me. And today, people say that's nice and move on. So to me, there has been a great openness that is available to people to stretch into their consciousnesses. I know a long time ago I did, Patrick Cook and I did shows on near-death experiences, and we found that the volunteers to come and talk on the shows about their near-death experiences, it was overwhelming. And to a person, every one of them, spoke of what happened, and then when they came back and we said, okay, so how has that changed your life? They all to a person said, I want to make life better for everybody. I want to take care of people. I want to be out there and serving humanity. I mean, there was a kindness in them, and I'm sure that there are people that have had near-death experiences that came back and were just creeps the way they were before, but not many. I am finding that most people having experienced that understand that there is so much out there to utilize, to draw on, and to make their lives and the lives of the people around them better. And it doesn't cost money. It just costs time. And time is probably the greatest gift you can give another human being.
I think it also costs the loss of an old belief system. That's a cost.
Yeah.
Just letting that go, giving that up.
Well, and I know that one of the things that people often ask is, if you get a transplant of somebody else's body part, does that mean that you have a piece of them inside of you, and does that change your focus and your consciousness, and then if you have an artificial limb, does that affect your consciousness? So, and your ability to be
yes
psychic?
To both. I would say yes to both.
So the soldiers that come back and that have artificial limbs, they aren't. Now, to me, of course, their spirit is still fully intact, and they aren't changed at all. It's just that some of their pieces are, their physical pieces are missing, but not their auric field. So, to me, having an artificial limb or arm or whatever, but then you get into the, playing with the brain, and that does bother me. That does change perception. It's like changing an engine in a car. You can screw it up majorly.
Yeah.
So
look at the Tesla cars. That's the whole. You don't have an engine anymore. You have a battery. I mean, that's kind of another example of that. But I would say someone that has an artificial limb, that I think that is going to impact their consciousness. Absolutely. And it could be beneficial in the end, but it's going to impact their consciousness because their brain's going to have to change to accommodate that artificial limb. And their nervous system is going to have to change to accommodate that artificial limb. So I think anytime any of that happens, and I also think, before this all gets too dark, because there's really dark. It's almost like every day I come upon more darkness. But just to also say that we as humans are. I'll just give you an example. So I remember when I was living in Washington, D.C., and I read Annie Jacobson's book on DARPA, and I was really interested in all the DARPA projects and how they ran them and what they did. And I remember reading through her book. It's a great book. And just seeing that every time DARPA invented something, that lo and behold, the humans would hack it every time. For example, sensors. So we drive down the highway and a sensor picks up, our cars coming through, and it'll charge us for driving on that pay-to-drive highway as a toll. So then no more toll booths. Everything is just sensors. And so they invented sensor technology, kind of refined it more during the Vietnam War, and they laid the sensor technology up the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So they thought, well, when the soldiers come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail for North Vietnam, the sensors are going to pick it up. They're going to know, none of this, sneaking in at nighttime or anything. And so for a while, the soldiers were all going to be being killed, and, the troops in the South all knew when they were coming. The sensor technology was just working like a charm until the North Vietnamese said, well, they know that we're coming down the trail because of these sensors, so we'll just come down the trail a different way. So they all started riding their bicycles down the trail, and the sensor technology didn't work anymore. That's just one example. So that is a huge illustration, I would say, of the whole goal of the Institute for Exoconsciousness is how do we, as a nonprofit, how are we going to be able to end run some of this technology? For example, today I was just reading that, one of the things that people are upset about in terms of the vaccination is the spike protein, because the spike protein, of course, gets into your body, begins to multiply, it goes into your lymph nodes, and you have a whole situation there. And how do you get these spike proteins out of your body? Well, lo and behold, it looks like Russia has developed a drug to remove the spike proteins. So it looks to me like it's part of this is going to be fun. I think it's really fun to do these kind of things, to kind of feel empowered. Like this transhumanism, this artificial field of consciousness, that it's not going to own me. And you just have to determine that no matter what, it's not going to own me. I'm going to claim my free will in this. And my free will means that. Go ahead.
No, I think one of the delightful parts about all this is one of the purposes maybe of transhumanism is to stretch us in exoconsciousness so that if transhumanism presents a situation, then we are challenged with our creativity to go beyond it and go around it. So that in many ways it is spurring us on to greater depths of understanding of the cosmic aspects that are available, and it challenges us in our own creativity. It's sort of like, hackers, hack into programs all the time, and then people will create more programs, and the hackers are right behind them with, finding the back door and getting in. So it's really, in many ways, transhumanism is a wonderful challenge to our creative ability to go beyond. So maybe
and
we
to
wouldn't
ask for that help.
Yeah, but without that challenge, would we be so intense on going into the cosmic connections? Would we be kind of like, dancing with it instead of, challenging it and drawing it into our reality? It makes us use it more than we might have on another, if we didn't have the challenge of this transhumanism, at our heels saying, I will control you. And you saying, no, you won't. I'm going to be more creative and I'm going to stretch myself beyond you. So, catch me if you can. And so maybe transhumanism is important and crucial for human evolution.
That's how I see it. That's exactly how I see it. It took me, I share with you, it took me, 5 years to write this book because I spent 5 years just being scared to death, 4 years being scared to death, being traumatized, scared to death, PTSD'd over transhumanism. And I was living in D.C. at the time, working for Dr. Mitchell, and, people just were dropping things in my lap, and I'm like, you're kidding me, is this true? And then I research it, and I'm like, oh my golly, it's true. And so I sort of grew with, in the 2000s, I kind of grew with transhumanism as it was growing, but as a mother and a grandmother, there was a part of me that had a really hard time not just wanting to turn it off and ignore it because I was just so afraid, but there was something that just kept pulling me deeper and deeper into it, and I'm so glad that happened, and it kept challenging me at every turn. So, yeah, I would say that on a personal level, that had a lot to do with my evolution until I finally got to the point, I made a move, and that, of course, takes up a lot of time and sort of reorders your consciousness when you move. So I moved, I left Washington, D.C., I moved to Phoenix, and I was able to make that spiritual shift and not be so afraid of it and be excited by it and see the possibilities and potentials of it, and that this is our human evolution. And when we talk about the cosmos, I think it's important to also realize that one of the reasons that we need to be so empowered by exoconsciousness at this point is because we are becoming a space economy, and that for many of the powers that be on Earth, their focus and their money and all of their intellectual firepower is going to be focused on space, not on Earth. And that is going to put a different juxtaposition of government, these big international groups. They're going to be looking into space. And I think that we as exoconscious humans are going to be looking at it differently. We're going to be looking at it like maybe the cosmology we believed, like how the Earth was formed, how Jupiter was formed, how, is our moon the same moon that we've always had? Is it a new moon? Was there an old moon? All of these cosmological questions just in our solar system, not to mention out into the universe. I think that exoconscious humans are going to be developing new cosmologies of how creation happened. And I think that we'll be doing that. It's kind of like the Dogon tribe, in Mali in Africa, when the anthropologists went to visit the Dogon tribe, and the Dogon tribe is telling them about how the cosmos was created, all the plants and all the planets, and who rotated around what, and how it all worked. And they got that information not from the scientists of the time, because the scientists of the time didn't even have that information. They were identifying planets that would be identified decades later. So I think this is an exciting time that we're going into. We may be kind of like Betty Hill. Remember Betty Hill drawing the cosmos, the pictures of the cosmos? I mean, we may all become Betty Hills. We may be developing our own interstellar navigation consciousness. And it's not going to just belong to Lockheed Martin or, Northrop Grumman. It's going to belong to us as individuals, and we're going to know the navigation. And it's our natural cosmic consciousness that we will start to reclaim.
I totally agree. I do believe that cosmology is going to change for humanity over the next, millennia for sure, because it has to, because we're reaching into other realms and other dimensions. And so those concepts as to cosmology and creation and purpose and direction and all of this are going to change dramatically, because Earth is a very small planet. And while as humans we needed to develop myths and fables and belief systems that supported us in our development in becoming who we are today, won't, if we skip into 4 or 5 galaxies away from us, they won't know anything about the cosmology that has been here on Earth. It will be an entire another form of worship, if there is worship, or a connection with the divine. I think one of the things that I was fascinated with was in one place in your book you talk about nanotechnology being put into our clothing in China, which fascinated me. Let's traumatize them a little more. Talk about that.
Well, that was a funny story. So what I try to do in the book is weave some of the stories of how the information came to me. So I was at yoga one day, and there was a young man next to me on the yoga mat. And so when I used to go, I lived in the Beltway of Washington, D.C., and I would walk down the street. So I'd work in the morning, I'd walk down the street at noon, and I'd go to my noon yoga class, kind of, clear out the cobwebs of the day. And so there were a lot of kind of drop-in people that would come at noon and do yoga. And this man was next to me on the mat that one day. And after class, we walked up together and put our mats away and put our different props away and whatever. And I looked at him and I said, did you just come here after work? And he goes, oh, yeah. I said, where do you work? Like, is this your lunch hour? And he said, oh, yeah, I work up at an agency that I always forget the name of it, the Department of Science and Technology. It's got like a big long name to it, but it was a huge campus that was up the street from me. And I said, oh, that's great. And I said, I've just been reading about your agency, and they had done the 9/11 report. They'd done the Warren report, and they oversee a lot of commerce, the issues of commerce. Mm-hmm. And technology. And so I said, oh, I've been reading about what your agency does, and it's really fascinated. Which section are you in? And he said, oh, I'm in polymers, which is fabric. And I said, oh, you're in polymers? I said, well, that's the really interesting group that I've been reading about, because I realized that in the 2000s, when they offshored all of our clothing manufacturing to China, that they began to put nanotechnology into our clothing as a way to kind of experiment with monitoring us, and that nanotechnology was, we were experimenting with the ability of that nanotechnology to go into our skin and cross through our blood-brain barrier. And he looked at me and he said, lady, I don't know who you are, but don't ever talk to me again. And he ran down the stairs. So it's just, these big, once again, I mean, that whole agreement to outsource all our clothing to China, that was a planetary agreement.
I don't think people understand the totality, and I don't either, but the totality of stuff that has been going on while we've been trying to make our mortgage payments. And,
yes.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna check labels from now on. I'm gonna, if it comes from China, I'm going to be a little bit leery of, just what am I putting myself in for? I think.
Well, now they've now they don't need to put it in our clothing, because we have a whole segment of society that's willingly being injected. An injection is by far the best way to get it in our body. I mean, there's 3 delivery systems. So there's 3 main delivery systems for nanotechnology. There's the air we breathe, okay, and that goes back to that whole, space fence, the Earth to space infrastructure. There's food. Nanotechnology is delivered via food, and it will be especially delivered via all these genetically engineered meats that they'll be trying to sell us, because, of course, they're interrupting the food chain so that we can't get regular food or GMO, genetically modified. They'll be putting nanotechnology in that, and they have been for some time. And so air, food, and pharmacology. And by far the biggest experiment's the COVID vaccine, because that injectable, they can oversee, and it's a planetary project again. This is all planetary, and I think we need to wrap our minds around that word, planetary. This is everybody on the Earth is getting a COVID vaccine, unless you don't.
Well, then they get you another way. I mean, it's not like
then,
it's.
Yeah, but I don't know that. Yeah, but I guess there's a lot of hacks around that. So you could say I'm going to eat as much organic food as I can. I'm not going to eat this genetically modified food that they're trying to sell me. And furthermore, I'm certainly not going to eat any of this meats that are developed with stem cell technology. Who knows where the stem cell came from? We could be eating another human that's self-assembled and self-replicated, quite frankly, to be gross. We could be cannibalizing, turning our society into cannibals. So, and I think the air, I live with chemtrails in Arizona and Phoenix. We have chemtrails all the time. I don't choose to go out the days we have chemtrails. I try to be in chemtrails as little as possible. And there's all kinds of, protocols that you can do to get it out of your system. And I think the body's ability to cleanse and detox is just remarkable. I've been working with this one woman, and she does she has a technology that she uses called, so she does lymph massage. Those are our lymph nodes, lymph massage. And she uses a technology that was actually downloaded into an inventor, a woman that invented it. And I said to her one day, I said, you know, this lymph life that you're using on patients, you're going to be helping to release a lot of these spike proteins and a lot of this nanotechnology that collects in our lymph nodes. I mean, that's a scientific fact. If you look about vaccine research, it collects in our lymph nodes, and you go right into those lymph nodes with this new technology, and people are releasing it. You're going to help people clear their bodies of these injectables. So there's always going to be a workaround. A workaround is always going to show up. And personally, I ask for workarounds. I say, give me the workaround. I'll do it.
Well, it makes sense. And again, it's that challenge, you know, and so we are being forced to utilize aspects which we've always had inside of us to clear the field, to clear the way, to get a healthier system, you know, for humanity as a whole, and hopefully for the planet as well. Quite obviously, there are large corporate entities that have become so powerful that they're able to get around rules that have been set in motion supposedly to protect humanity, and they could care less. It's almost a joke. You know, they are going to do what they're going to do, and they have no rules. And it's a challenge, but I think that it's one that humanity as a whole will rise above. And you know, it'll be sad if we get to the point where we no longer have those challenges to our creativity, because I think that's what makes the leap. That's what, you know, makes us look for the portal. That's what makes us look for the abilities and the talents that are within us. And, you know, I do believe that we get messages all the time from higher consciousness, from the other realms, in the form of inspiration, in the form of synchronicities, in the form of, you know, just, you know, a shot of inspiration that helps you to live your life, you know, more fully. And that, you know, even though COVID is certainly making it difficult for a lot of us, it's just a challenge. It's just something that we will grow beyond, that we'll move beyond, and there will be another challenge. But it's not, as it sits now, it's not as devastating as we once thought it was. I mean, yeah, a lot of people catch COVID, but not as many are dying of it as used to. So, so we've come above and beyond it, and hopefully we will. Most of us will survive it, but it's a matter of challenging us. And I mean, the transhumanism, there are good points to it, but it's as with everything else. You know, if your crutch, if your solution becomes a crutch, then it starts to control you. And you don't want it to control you. You can use it for a purpose, but you can't let it control your life. And that's what has happened to us in many cases here.
Well, I think that, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I also think that in terms of meeting the challenge, part of the meeting the challenge, I have something that I call exoconscious coaching, and one of the themes of it is that because we've been so limited in our psychic intelligence, we've had a rather low psychic intelligence at this point. I mean, we have the potential for extremely high psychic intelligence. So that would be the ability, like you were saying, to use these inspirations or these subtle hints, as well as, becoming telepathic, as well as reading energy fields, as well as, seeing into the future, that all of these different abilities and just the whole focus of psychic intelligence, we haven't really had to use it because things have been pretty quiet for some time. And I think transhumanism, when we, as we're more and more confronted by it, we're going to have to, learn to trust our psychic ability. We're going to have to learn to trust our psychic intelligence. And I think trust is something, whether it's a parent to a child or a partner to a partner or a colleague to a colleague, trust is something that is incremental. It's consistently, I define it as consistency over time. So if over time, as you're met with these challenges of transhumanism, if over time you start to say, I'm going to trust my psychic intelligence, I'm going to go by my gut feeling, I'm going to go by my emotional feeling, whatever your primary psychic mode of information is for you, that once you begin to have to use it in order to survive intact as an exoconscious human, that every act of committing to trust that psychic intelligence or that psychic ability is what builds, it builds that intelligence over time. It's like raising a child, their intelligence doesn't just, flourish when they're 1 year old. You build it over time by talking to them, by telling them stories, by taking them out into nature, by having them around other people. And I think that's the same. I think a similar thing is going to happen to the human species with transhumanism, that they're not going to have anything to turn to because, quite frankly, the artificial field of consciousness is running everything. So either they can find a few, kind of remnant exoconscious humans to rely on, and if they can't, maybe your community could provide this. But at the end of the day, they are going to have to strengthen that and heighten that psychic intelligence, which is really the hallmark of an exoconscious human. And it takes time, it takes trust, and it takes practice.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you don't just turn it on, but once you, and I think as soon as somebody recognizes there's something more there to reach for, as soon as they see enough things happen in their own personal worlds that they can say, that's so weird, I don't understand how that happened. And the more they have those kind of situations, whether it's synchronicity, whether it's just knowing, somebody's going to call and they call, those kind of things, once you recognize them and starts to validate them and understand what's happening, that there is a channel being opened up within you, then you find your way of adding energy to it. Whether it's meditation, whether it's look at the whirling dervishes. They spin around in circles. It's still, I don't recommend that, by the way, but I'd throw up. But
there's a religion built on it, so yeah.
I know. Look at the Santeria with how they get into. Everybody has their own way, and when you find that way, whatever it is, embrace it and allow it to open you to those other aspects. I mean, it's your alternative is to trust to the machines, and I don't think that's as much fun. I mean, basically, I thoroughly enjoy the exoconsciousness aspects of my being that I am able to use and draw from. And yes, I rely on the computer for whole bunches of stuff like the show. But there are times when it would be fun to just put a group together and let's work on telepathy. Let's do this. I've had groups that we did remote viewing, on the computer actually. So it's stretch yourself, because in stretching yourself you give yourself a higher potential of understanding of the human spirit and where you are within this reality, and how you can benefit from these gifts, and how other people can benefit from your benefiting from them. So it's a wonderful experience. And exoconsciousness, you talk to I don't call them aliens anymore, because of course that term is being used all over the place, but non-terrestrials. Touching in with other species even. It is a reality that you can experience, and it doesn't make you crazy. It makes you expanded. And I think that's the important thing people have to understand. It broadens the scope of what they have the potential to relate to and touch into this lifetime, and in lifetimes yet to come.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting for us to watch what happens with the sort of, I would say, the intelligence community takeover of ufology and UFOs, and that's all part of this artificial cyborg, artificial field of consciousness, this comprehensive field of consciousness that's been seeded with Hollywood and now Netflix and seeded into our consciousness. This is the real thing. So it's going to be very interesting when the government, what happens with the reporting to the Senate Intelligence Committee, what's going to happen with that. But I think the whole goal in that is to begin to shorten and shrink extraterrestrial contact, so that it'll be always called a threat. It will be always seen as these are the major species you have to worry about. There's no other species. There's just this species, and then they're threatening Earth. So I think that those, as you were saying so well, that once you've had contact, you can't, or once you've seen something or experienced something, you can't unsee it. You can't unexperience it. And luckily for the human race, enough people have had contact now that when they try to implement their psyop or their field of their artificial reality, their augmented reality of ETs, most aren't going to fall for it. I think who may fall for it maybe are the young people that do nothing but watch Netflix and play ET computer games. But I think that we have a lot of experiencers on our side, and I think a lot of people who've been silent in the past will be coming forward and become very, very vocal, quite frankly. And that's how it's not that ETs will save us or give us a solution. It's that we trust ourselves enough to be honest and authentic with what we've experienced and share it with other people. And I think that's what's going to bring us through this. That's Exoconscious Humans.
Well, and frankly, any ETs that are on this planet are in as much trouble as we are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah. Or any hybrids or any walk-ins or, absolutely. Yeah.
But this full disclosure that the government has released everything, to me was such a disappointment, because they didn't release everything.
They didn't release anything.
No. And a lot of paperwork. Yeah. A lot of paperwork, but it was ridiculous. And when you have people like von Braun saying, well, we had help, the others helped us, and I don't know what they take us for, but obviously they don't take us for being very smart. But it's sort of like they're out there and they're here, and if they were going to, terraform the planet and take it over or change the atmosphere, they would have done it millions of years ago. So that they're here for a reason.
Yeah. But there's also a contingent in, and I don't know if you've come across them, but there is a contingent in ufology of people who are blaming transhumanism on evil aliens. So they're saying that this is an alien threat that has seeded transhumanism on the planet. I would totally disagree with that. I mean, with some of this back-engineered information, yeah, that could be. But we humans are responsible for doing this, not some alien. We have to hold ourselves responsible.
The humans have enough negative energy to have created this all by themselves.
And
I don't think we
need. We also, I mean, like I try to show in my book, with all of this, there's a historical timeline to it. It didn't pop out of nowhere. It's historical. It didn't get passed down by an alien trying to take over the planet. No, this has been going on for centuries.
Well, that's what I try to explain to people, that what's going on today has been in the works and in plans for probably thousands of years. Probably we are, and the thing is, I don't think we're close to the end. I don't even know if we're close to the middle. There is a whole process that we're going to be going through, obviously, and I would take it as a challenge to rise above it and go beyond it, as opposed to be controlled by it and manipulated by it. And frankly, I have no desire to be manipulated. I'd rather make my own mistakes. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I'm really good at it. So.
Yeah, that's part of being human. I think, whether we go beyond it, whether we navigate it, whatever model we use, I think it's going to be only for our good. It's just reconciling it with our heart, reconciling our heart in this, and saying that I have the heart capacity to love myself enough to know that I'm going to be able to maneuver through this, to navigate through this.
Absolutely. I just noticed the time. Do you want to give out websites and stuff like that so people can find you and get in touch with you and stuff?
Sure. My main website is exoconsciousness.com, and we're in the process of revamping the IXO website. We're kind of trying to see how we can be most effective in this preservation and advancement of natural human consciousness. So that's offline, but it'll be back online, I would say, in a month or so. I offer different services. I do exoconscious coaching, information about that. I also, do these interviews. I write books, and would love for people to reach out and get in touch with me, and I'll put you on my mailing list, and that would be wonderful. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a total pleasure. I'm so glad that we were able to get together. Yeah. Let's do it, before 3 years is up again.
I know. It'll be interesting the next time we do it to see what's really unfolded.
It certainly will be. So thank you so much.
I think it's going to be a real joy.
It's going to be fun to watch it all, actually.
It is.
But thank you so much for being here tonight and sharing your information. My pleasure, totally.
Okay.
Good night now.
Have a lovely evening. Night.
You too. Good night. And everybody, thank you for joining. And we'll see you on Monday. And Mark has a great show for Tuesday. So please check us out on YouTube. And if you like what you see, please subscribe, because that's how we know you're watching. Have a great evening, everybody. Good night.